everybody. It's Michelle LaVore and
Devin LaVore.
Coming at ya.
Coming at you. We were out of sync there. Whatever.
We were. And so we just kind of wanted to talk about some of what God's been sharing with us. As we mentioned in the last video about being just in the garden. That's really where God has us. And it's really where He's had us this entire week, is just really just showing us what is it like when you're in the garden. And so it's just been good, and there's been challenges as far as just like what expectations are for me. For example, you know, we had just that one day where it was just so restful and it was amazing, and I was just like, okay, I want every day.
Was that at the beginning of the week?
Yeah,
Monday
it's at
or Sunday or Monday or something like that?
I think it's Monday.
Yeah.
And it was just this like, oh, so this is what it's like in the garden. So it's just happy, and we will never face another difficulty ever. Which I know isn't true, but in my mind, it was just this
Hold my tongue a little bit.
It was just like, all right, we're in this new place, and so in this new place, maybe there's not going to be, issues won't arise, you know. And the truth is, issues do arise.
But it's funny that expectation arose.
Yeah, it did.
That would happen.
It's like you know, realistically, that's not going to happen.
You know, the earth is full of people, right? Families have people in it.
Yeah.
You know.
And issues arise when there's more than one person.
Which is good, because it's like, you know, you're going to have issues, but the thing of it is to deal with them as they come up, not bury them or oh, no, you're messing up my utopia. Get out of here, issue. It's not going to go anywhere.
No.
You know what I mean?
But it's also, though, how you handle issues. And I really felt like God was just kind of showing me some things when it comes to handling issues in a garden place. And we had listened.
What do you mean by garden place? Can we define that real quick
the
before
garden,
we move on?
I guess
because people might be like, "What are you talking about, garden?"
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I just feel like with the garden place, it's really the promise of the Lord that you're in a place where there is just abundance. You're walking with the Lord in. I don't even know how to explain it exactly.
Well, I think it's more like a place in your relationship with God, in your heart, like where He has you right now. It's just this place of just magnificence and delight, and it's not the wilderness.
It's not.
It's not the dry and the barren and the fighting and the contending and the
it's really a place of
how
rest.
long, O Lord, and it's just a place of like lush garden, rivers. You know, peace, rest, and just I don't know, just things in life just seem to be just awesome. Even though your circumstances have literally, not changed. There's something in the spirit that's changed, where you've arrived in the spirit, which is way more real than your earthly circumstances, where you've arrived in the spirit with your relationship with God, how you're interacting with God, and just the flow of revelation that comes, and the intimacy of relationship and all that. I think that's really, because you know, you go back to the Garden of Eden meaning delight, garden of delight. God's delight is in you, just walking with Him in the cool of the day, and just everything's cool. You know, everything's awesome. Everything is awesome. Anyway.
But it really is.
I saw that post on the graduates. Anyway.
But it really is a place where God has brought us to it. You know, it's not.
Yeah, we didn't get here.
It's not a place where we're just like, all right, now we're determined that this is where we're going to be. Yeah. But it's like, really felt like the Lord had said that, well, you're in the garden now, and it's different than when you're in the desert. What God's doing is different. It's new. It's unknown. Yeah. And
can I share that?
Yeah.
Because I felt like the Lord shared that with me. It was during one of our God times about a week ago. He was like, Devin, you're not in the desert anymore. You're not in the wilderness anymore. And of course, for me, I'm like, well, why are we still in the hotel then? You know what I mean? Because I'm always relating what God is saying to our outward circumstances. I'm like, there's got to be some sort of outward manifestation of what you're saying. You know, it can't all be spiritual, because there's got to be a spiritual thing that lines up with a physical thing. That's what you've been teaching me and all that. But naturally, God just follow me and trust me. And it was like, the way you did things in the wilderness is not the way it works here in the garden.
Yeah.
And so he was like, he began to speak to me about speaking to things.
Yeah.
He was like, I didn't put Adam in the garden to till it and tend it and all that stuff like he did when he had put out of the garden. Yeah. That's a completely different way of life. Mm-hmm. When you're in the garden, you just speak to things and they happen.
Yeah.
You speak and it happens. You ask and it's given. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. But of course, it's all by that spirit of intimacy and relationship with God, like we read this morning in our God time. What is it? John 15:8. Mm-hmm. If my word abides in you and you abide in me, and continually ask whatever you want and it shall be done.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean instantaneously, because even when God spoke, there was evening and there was morning. So there was a 24-hour process going on there. There was a process. There's always a process. But it just felt like the Lord was like, I want you to ask. And so we had this time where we were just asking, like, all right, God is with us. We're asking, and it was like, continue to ask for the things like that we've always been asking for.
Yeah.
But we were asking for other things as well. And so God was just showing me, like, that's how it works.
Yeah.
That's how it works. And I'm like, but for me, I'm like, well, how is that any different than what we just came out of? You know what I mean? We've been asking for the same stuff. I mean, what is it? But it just is. You just have to know by the Spirit that you're in a different place.
Yeah.
And the way God's moving in your life now will be different than the way he moved in your life before, even if you're asking for the same things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like we've just been in this kind of garden place with the Lord, and we had been listening to it was Paul Keith Davis with White Dove Ministries.
Oh,
he came out with a video recently, and there was something that he said in the video. It wasn't really the main thing he was talking about.
Is that the voice of freedom?
Yeah. Oh, okay. He was talking about how, when Jesus washed the disciples' feet.
Oh, yeah.
And
that was good. And
basically for me, I took kind of what he said with it, and it was just kind of been marinating in it. Mm-hmm. And I really felt like it tied into, when things arise when you're in the garden place of conflict, especially with other people. Maybe it's your family, or somebody that maybe you even just, it could be a roommate that you're with all the time, or it could be any number. Relational conflict. Yeah. And because basically I felt like I think Paul Keith talked about it too. It's like when you're washing the feet, that's just like, we mess up. As you go on, you might, oh man, I was really harsh towards this person. And it's no different than getting your feet dirty. And so Jesus is washing your feet. When you just go to him, it's like, Lord, I messed up. And he's like, I wash your feet, you're clean. And so yesterday, it really was this like picture of like, when somebody messes up, don't start flinging more mud or poo on them. Because I had this picture of like, I was telling the kids yesterday, I was like, sometimes we mess up and you get your feet dirty and you step in the mud and you step into poo, but you don't want to keep that on your feet because it's going to stink and it's going to be gross. But you have to go to Jesus and say, hey, Lord, I repent of this, and can you wash my feet? And he washes your feet. But it's like sometimes in a conflict, your emotions can arise on both ends, and then you can start having they call that like the mud slinging, or my vision of it is like, the poo slinging, because it always stinks. It's never good. So, and it's like, you don't want to do that. What you want to do is wash each other's feet. Mm-hmm. And, I've heard of the washing each other's feet, and it's always, for me in the past, has been service oriented.
Sure.
Like, oh, it means stuff. Yeah, you do things for another person. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, I'm gonna make you breakfast in bed. That's me washing your feet. And I really think that's
not even the biblical picture that Jesus was setting down there.
No.
He was washing dirt off the disciples' feet.
And so I just felt like God was saying, like, no, washing the feet, it really has to do with covering one another in love.
Yeah.
And it has to do with
just thought of something.
Just just washing one another with the love of God and forgiving one another.
Yep.
And that's what really washing each other's feet is all about. It's saying, you know what, I see that, especially, you know, it's like, oh, this thing, you've done this to me, or I've done that to you, and we're going to come and wash each other's feet through forgiveness. And
can I read this? This is from Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. Bear, endure, carry one another's burdens. Don't point that at them in criticism, criticize them because they have the burden.
Yeah.
That's what Pharisees do. You know what I mean? Bear, endure, carry one another's burdens and troublesome moral faults. I love that part. Because they're troublesome. They're like little foxes. It's just like, let's just shoot them and get them out of the vineyard.
Yeah.
Don't criticize me because I got them in there. You know what I mean? And in this way, fulfill and observe perfectly the law of Christ and complete what is lacking in your obedience to it. For if any person thinks himself to be somebody too important to condescend to shoulder another's load when he is nobody of superiority except in his own estimation, he deceives and deludes and cheats himself. So what's the scripture saying there? It's basically saying, listen, like that video that God gave me a year and a half ago, maybe. He's like, listen, Devin, everybody's got issues. And that's the truth. We all do. We're all growing and developing in this, whether you're 5 years old or 46 years old. You know, we all have problems and issues. But it's like, that was the Pharisees' problem, is they felt like they were too good for everybody. So when you have that pride, it's like 1 Corinthians 8:1. It says, knowledge puffs up and makes you prideful, but love edifies. See, pride will point the finger and go, oh, you're in sin, bad, blue, boo-hoo, moral fault, troublesome, look at that burden. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas love will come alongside and help lift it. See, and what did Jesus do? Man, I'm about to preach. Jesus came alongside and he lifted. Yeah. He lifted all of our sin.
Yeah.
He didn't come, what does it say in John 3:17? It's like, for the Son of Man did not come to judge the world, but that the world might be saved through him. Yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate bearing of burdens right there. It's like, well, we're in Christ. We've arrived at utopia. There shall be no more problems, correct? Nope.
Not
your problems just began, actually.
Not while we live on this earth.
Right, exactly. And I think that's kind of like what you were kind of getting a fresh revelation of, like, man, we're in this great garden place, because it was just really awesome for like 3-4 days. But then it just started there was stuff that started mounting, you know, snakes in the garden. You know what I'm saying? Moles in the dirt. It's just like, what? That's not supposed to be here. It's like, well, actually, yeah, it is. It's always been there.
But I think it's like God's just saying, like, you can handle it differently in the garden place, and handle it with love and with washing each other's feet. And then today, which I felt just goes right along with it, is just though we talked about this morning about John 15 and just abiding with the Lord. And again, another picture of the garden is that there's usually trees, and trees have fruits and blossoms, and you know, in a garden. And it's like, all right, well, we're abiding with God, and so then he's really just producing the fruits in us. Right. And it's the fruits. It's like, you will bear much fruit, and it's all about the fruits of the Spirit. You know, there's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control. And so it was just this morning we were really just talking about, you know, that's what it means. We need to be in the Lord and continue to just be with him. And so there isn't, we talked about how, like, I was like, well, can a branch just bear fruit on its own? Can it do anything to bear fruit? It's like, no, it gets all the nutrients from the tree itself, from the vine. And that's what produces the fruit. And so it's like, well, what do we need to do? Because that seems to be something that I think we always ask. It's like, Lord, well, what can we do? And it's like, well, there isn't anything to do except to just be with me, walk with me in the garden.
Well, what if you have one of those personal faults? You see this personal fault that you have, because that's kind of like what was going on in our family, that God used to kind of help us develop this. Basically what we're sharing right now is like, I had a personal issue, my daughter had a personal issue, and then you're feeding off the issue, and there's just a swirl of just like, well, what about this, and da 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 da, and it's just like, these are issues that keep happening. The issues that keep happening over and over and over and over and over again, where your own moral, personal, troublesome faults just keep colliding with other people's in the family. That's what we're talking about. For us, that's what it was. It was a collision of issues in the family. And I'm like, this keeps happening over and over and over again. It's like, well, what do you do with that? Well, a lot of times you want to see an issue that you have and you go, all right, Lord, let's attack this right here. And God's like, I'm not really concerned about that. What? How can you not be concerned about that?
Yes.
This is an issue. And God's like, well, I really want to do this here. This is like joy and peace, and like, no, this is interrupting the joy and the peace right here. And he's like, not really. I'm like, so I'm just, all that to say, to tag on what you're saying, you have to really come to God and just like, God, this is what's going on. That is what you do.
Yeah.
You just keep going to the Lord and be like, Lord, what's up? And then you hear his response. You go with his response. A lot of times, God will accept us for who we are, but we won't accept ourselves for who we are, because we judge ourselves and criticize ourselves and condemn ourselves and reject ourselves based on these troublesome moral issues, particularly the ones that keep coming up over and over and over again. Now, I'm not talking about like sin issues, like if you have like internet issues or something like that, or you're stepping out on your spouse or something. That's not what we're talking about.
No.
We're talking about just like anger issues or impatience or getting overly emotional or any of those type of things that are just like character issues. We're not talking about sin issues.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's like those things that just keep coming up. What do? It's funny. While you're getting mad at yourself and you're rejecting yourself and you're just going, bad Devin, bad. He's wanting to hug you. Yeah. He's wanting to bless you. He's wanting to accept you. Where in the area that you want to reject yourself, he's wanting to hug you. He's wanting to reassure you. He's wanting to support you with love. And that's totally that Galatians 6:2. Even, it's like, that's who God is.
Yeah.
It's not something that's like, okay, I did that once and that's all I'm going to do. No, he's just expressing who he is.
Yeah.
He's like, you be like me. Come on and shoulder come alongside and help people.
Yeah. And so kind of going off of just how like God just accepts us, and when we're a part with Christ, it's like we've already been made clean. And so Devin, I'm gonna have Devin actually read John chapter 15 and just verses 2 and 3.
Okay, cool. So it says, any branch in me that does not bear fruit, that stops bearing, he cuts away, trims off, takes away, and he cleanses and repeatedly prunes every branch. Oh, that's what I was going to say. That's that old old school word called sanctification.
Yeah.
Repeatedly prunes every branch that continues to bear fruit, to make it bear more and richer and more excellent fruit. See, you think you're going through something because God's mad at you. He's like, no, I love you. Snip, snip, clip, clip.
Well, and I think that was important. I think that's really what God was showing me. He's like, having issues arise, really it's like, that's really even God. He's like, all right, yeah, things are going to come up. You just snip and prune them away. And then it produces a more richer fruit. That's why in James it always talks about be joyful, when you face various trials, because it's going to produce something that's excellent.
There's some good stuff going to come out of this. Well, they're better because this is not feeling good right now.
Yeah.
I mean, no one volunteers for surgery because it feels good. No. But the end result is going to be long-term health.
Yeah.
So, you are cleansed and pruned already because of the word which I have given you. the teachings I have discussed with you. Oh yeah, I just said that. Oh,
yeah.
I stole your thunder again, didn't I?
That's all right.
You're used to it.
But yeah, and so like that verse 3 actually really stuck out to me today.
You keep going.
Because it was just like, yes, like the Word of God, it continually washes us. And so, you know, really it's not like, oh, we've messed up, or, you know, maybe we said something too harshly or any of those things. It's not like you're kicked out of the garden. You just need the Lord to come in and wash your feet. And it's just it's a continual process. You know, it's no different, you know, when you're walking, you know, in the disciples, when they were following Jesus, and, you know, back then they wore sandals on their feet. And so as they're walking, there's just dirt that's going to come and it's going to get on you, but you just wash it off. Mm-hmm. And it really isn't, I don't know, it's not, I think if anything, God's just like, you know, I cover you with my love. And what Jesus did on the cross is just so phenomenal. That's really been something too that's been kind of sticking out to us this week, of just being reminded of all that Jesus did on the cross for us, and it's because of him that we can enter in the place of the garden, that things are restored back to what they were before, and that we have life. Yeah. And there's great joy and delight in the life that Jesus has for us. And then one of the other things that we talked about too was just, you know, in John 15 it talks about like glorifying God, and you do that through producing fruit. Yes. And it's kind of funny because it's like the Lord's like, you can glorify me when you produce fruit. Well, how do we produce fruit? Well, we would just stick with Jesus. We stick with the Lord. We continue to follow him. And so it very much is like that scenario of like, you know, your 5-year-old maybe is like, Mommy, I want to make you a cake for your birthday. And you go out and buy everything for the cake. And they can help make it. They do their small little part, but technically you're probably right there with them, like mixing it, pouring it in, putting it in the oven. And then they turn around and present it to you. But when they present it to you, it really truly is a gift, and your heart is just made glad. And it's like that with the Lord. He's like, hey, I'm going to do everything. I'm actually the one that is giving you the life to be able to produce the fruit. I'm pruning you. I'm doing all of this to produce these great fruit that is actually going to give me glory. And so it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just...
Well, let's see the heart of God in that. Jesus did not say, when you have a great teaching ministry, apostolic center, a prophetic word all the time, when you have all these ministry things. Because see, in the religious world, in the ministry world, in the church world, doing ministry type things, that's what glorifies God. Yeah. And then you got people in those positions that are just fruitless in here.
Yeah.
But hey, man, look at what God's doing through them. Well, yeah, that's God doing it through them and all that, but it's like there's going to be people that come to the Lord who have done a lot of ministry things, and God's going to be like, I never knew you. And that's going to be another one of those baffling things where people will be like, what? What do you mean? Look at what you did through them. Yes, I did that through them because they were available to me in that way, but they didn't want to be with me. And that's a whole nother video. But it's like, notice what he said. He said, when you bear fruit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, you know what I'm saying? When you bear those things, then you glorify the Father. The world will know you're my disciples when you get that prophetic ministry rocking, man. I'm telling you what. No, I don't see that anywhere in Jesus' words. No. Say the world will know you're my disciples by the love you have for one another.
Yeah.
And that has everything to do with dealing with issues and carrying burdens. Yeah. You ain't gonna love someone and not carry their burdens. You're not gonna, I can't love you and just be like, ooh, you're dealing with that issue again? Okay, just come back to me later when you're done.
Well, and it says you will know a tree by its fruit.
Right.
Again, that's not talking about, oh, well, you have a great ministry and oh, you don't, so you must not really be following the Lord or whatever. But
I mean, that is so old. That is so old and tired and stale.
But it really is about the fruit that you're producing in the kindness that you have.
Humility, integrity, doing what you say. You know, just being honest, open, vulnerable. You know, with the right people in the right context and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want. walking in wisdom, those kind of things. That the world prizes outward appearance. That is actually why God wants to bless his people, because that's the communication that they have. Then you can bring them in and help them produce the fruit. That's the whole purpose of ministry, is bringing people into the care and the love of God, and getting them grafted in, so then they can begin to produce the life of the kingdom in them, with that relationship with God. That's what it's all about. It's not about numbers and getting all your, Speaking of numbers, you want to talk about the 21?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I almost forgot about that.
I am excited about this.
But yeah, so
this was crazy.
Yesterday, I'd been, I saw the number 21 quite a few times. I think 4 or 5 times.
But this was after God was showing you. Was this after or before?
No, I saw it like a few times before, but I didn't. It was one of those things where I'm like, it's. Sometimes you see numbers, they mean something. Sometimes it's just like, okay, whatever. I just saw that.
Yeah.
And so I just been kind of processing through, what God was showing me with washing each other's feet. And so then at the end of the night, after I shared with Devin, I was like, yeah, I think it's just the washing of the feet. It has to do with really just, washing each other's feet during conflict instead of, trying to throw more mud on the pile and stuff. And then again, I saw the number 21, and it was like, okay, let's just see what this is about. And as you're
saying it, I looked down to the sheet of paper, and it was like 17, and then there was another 21.
Yeah.
And I was just like, whoa, it was like a big 21 just sticking out at me. I was like, okay, yeah, we need to check that out.
Yeah.
We need to figure that one out.
I just went on and we have this document that we look at that just has the numbers 1 through 40. And so basically the first sentence was talking about just how God covers the sins. And
giving you grace to cover
sin
and stuff.
And I was just like, wow, that's exactly what I was talking about. Like how it's like we need the strength of God to cover one another's sins. And it was just like, that's it. So it was just really cool because it was just this like confirmation right away.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, because in all of our history with God using that number for us, it's never meant that. No. It's always meant the end of distress.
Yeah.
But interestingly, you can cover the moral faults.
Yeah.
you really do bring an end to the distress of the situation. Sin stresses us out. Moral issues stresses us out. But when we realize and we come into a revelation that God's love covers that, it ends your distress about it.
Yeah.
Then you can accept yourself for who you are because God has. So you're actually out of alignment and not really in step with God when you're rejecting yourself and dissing yourself and putting yourself in the corner because God didn't put you there. You put yourself there.
Yeah.
It's like come into alignment with God who loves you and wants to carry you and wants to wash your feet and dust you off and just, love you. And it's like that brings an end to your distress and it brings you peace.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it still was an end of distress.
It was.
But it's like God just showing you like when you do that, that's better than just trying to solve the issue on your own.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Can I get an amen? Our wives be like, I'm going through this. Oh, well, let me solve your issue. No, I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
Like, why? Why are you telling it to me then? What's the whole point? The whole point of telling me the issue is so that it can be solved. It's a problem. There's a solution. Here it is. Well, I don't really want the solution right now. I just need a vent. Oh, that makes no sense, but that's okay. I've been married for a while. I'm starting to get it. Not really.
Really, I pray that you guys would just be able to experience the garden and to really, that's been my heart's prayer this week is just like, Lord, teach us how to live in the garden.
Yeah.
So we've been so used to living in the place of the desert and what God was doing there. But now it's like, hey, we've entered into this garden time with the Lord. How do we live there? How do we go about just processing life? It's very different. And
well, can I give a little update before we close? Because it's like we made those videos about Jericho and all that stuff, and I'm sure people are probably wondering, well, where are you guys with that, and what's going on with that? And it's like, this is where we're at.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm not really sure where we're at in that vision of the cruise ship and dropping anchor and all that stuff, and the Lord moving aside the palm trees and all that. And I'm not really sure where we're at with that. It's just, I just know that God, I really, even last night, I haven't talked to you about this, I really felt like the Lord was like, no, I am still marching you toward the promised land.
Yeah.
You know, I am. In one, from a different angle, because, you know, Jesus always uses different pictures to tell us where we're at.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's right where we're at. This garden place is a place where this is where I want you to be before your surroundings change. And it's like, okay, I can see the importance of that. I can see how, you know, the anxiety has been hitting me quite a bit lately. And it's just like, man, I'm ready. I'm just ready to, you know, that kind of thing. And it's like, you don't need to be, you know. And that's a whole nother video. But I just wanted to just kind of give a little update real quick. I'm just like, we're still like, we're still like just moving forward with the Lord, and we will see the glory of God. That's something that the Lord's been putting on my heart a lot lately. Believe. You got to believe. Even when I was at Costco today waiting for the Uber to come and pick me up, God just came to me. He's like, Devin, you got to believe. You have to. Mm-hmm. It's like he's like, you can't not believe or something like that. And I was like, and it's like, I know your emotions can be very heavy sometimes, and you can be wondering, and there can be a long suffering, but you know, the long suffering creates the great forming and all that. But it's like, the bottom line is you just got to believe.
Yeah.
You know, you can't get to these points where it's like you're tired and you're just like, oh, I don't know anymore. And you know, those visions, whatever happened to that, and it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is you got to believe that. What have you heard? Believe that.
Yeah.
Continue to believe, and you will see the glory of God. And it's like, you know, in Mary and Martha's situation with Lazarus, everything around them was telling them that it was death, not life. But when Jesus comes on the scene, then there's real life. Even though, now listen, Jesus is on the scene talking to Mary and Martha. I guess I'll be Martha, you can be Mary. He hadn't done anything yet. He's just there talking with them. I almost feel like that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
You know, where Jesus has arrived, but he's just like talking to us and telling us some things, you know, but we're not trying to figure out the timing either. But so I think that's update enough. Yeah. We can do another video at some other point.
Yeah.
If, you know, if the Spirit leads us to share more of that kind of journey or whatever.
Well, I just wanted to say too, like, I really feel like we're, you know, it's like he said that God said we would drop anchor, and I really feel like if anything this week, it's been like the dropping anchor really in our souls of just knowing that, like, I don't know, just putting us in the garden place for inside, and like it's like that's your anchor. This is where you live, and so for me in that way, it's been like I feel like this week in particular has been a lot on just having, I don't know, even more so like cementing in that Jesus is the anchor, and he really is that place that you can go.
I tell you what, that literally is a whole nother video, because there's so many different examples that I can share over this past several days, even today, last night, that was just like, God's like, you have me. And I'm telling you, you don't need anything else. And it's like, wow. So we better close, because well, this will turn into a double video again.
So we will wrap it up now, and that's what we have for you. But again, we just thank you all for your continued prayers, your continued support, and we just so really appreciate all of you, and we really can't say thank you enough. And but until next time, I pray that you guys would just be able to dwell with the Lord in your own gardens. So
yes.
We will see you later.
Bye, guys. Love ya.